Hi, I'm Gordon, and I'm here to tell you you've been deceived. Thanks for joining me. The goal of this channel is to help repair the world by bringing reconciliation between Christianity and Judaism. For at least 17 centuries, Jews have been lied to about Christ and persecuted by an anti-Semitic church. For just as long, Christians have been lied to about Jews, Judaism, and the Torah of Moses. As a result, the New Testament scriptures have been stripped of their Jewish context and sometimes intentionally mistranslated. So, we're trying to roll back the matrix of lies and deception to discover how beautifully seamless faith in Yeshua and biblical Judaism can be. Here's your red pill. The Gospels are Jewish books written about Jewish people reacting to the Jewish Messiah within a first century Jewish culture. If you're like me, you've probably read passages in the Gospels that make you think, there's no way I can understand this unless a Jew explains it to me. Well, this was my reaction the first time I opened a Bible. So, to deepen my understanding of Yeshua and the Gospels, I have sought out Jews who can explain it to me. And I'll tell you what, the things I've been learning are so profound and exciting, I have to share them with you. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Yeshua used spit to heal people. The Gospel of John records that while in Jerusalem, Yeshua, that's Jesus, spat onto the ground, creating mud, and then applied this mixture to the eyes of a blind man. Let's look at John chapter 9, 1 through 7. As Yeshua was passing by, he saw a man who had been blind since birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he should be born blind? Yeshua answered, Neither this man nor his parents sinned. This happened so that the works of God might be brought to light in him. I must do the work of the one who sent me so long as it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Having said these things, he spat on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud on the blind man's eyes. He told him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went away, washed, and came back seeing. In Mark, we read of another blind man who was brought to Yeshua in Bethsaida, and Yeshua simply spat on his eyes to heal him. Then he came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. So he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands on him, he asked him if he saw anything. And he looked up and said, I see men like trees walking. Then he put his hands on his eyes again and made him look up. And he was restored, and he saw everyone clearly. Mark also records that Yeshua inserted his spit-moistened fingers into the ears of a deaf man and touched his tongue with saliva also. And he took him aside from the multitude and put his fingers in his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. Why did Yeshua use spit to heal people? When you think about it, a miracle worker gains attention simply by performing a miracle. When men who have been born blind, deaf, or dumb since birth start to see, hear, or talk, it needs no great fanfare or embellishment. So then, why did Yeshua do this? Especially when the society of Israel in the Second Temple period understood and avoided issues of ritual impurity. You might think that for someone to heal a person using his own saliva would raise more than a few eyebrows. The obvious question is, couldn't Yeshua have simply spoken or reached out his hand to bring about the healing of these three men? If so, why did he choose this method? Was there a hidden message in what Yeshua did? Well, the answer is yes, there was a hidden message. Yeshua chose to use spit in order to send a powerful message about his parentage and his position as sole legitimate heir to his father's inheritance. You see, it was conceivable in biblical times for a man to have several sons by different wives. Occasionally, one would contest the claims of another son as to who was the genuine heir. For example, the patriarchs Abraham and Jacob had multiple wives. Abraham sent his wives and sons away from Isaac so that there would be a clear demonstration of who his heir was. But Abraham gave gifts to the sons of the concubines which Abraham had, and while he was still living, he sent them eastward, away from Isaac, his son, to the country of the east. One reason for disputing the claim of inheritance would be illegitimacy, whether the son was conceived within wedlock or not. The writer of Hebrews says we know that we are truly a child of God because we are disciplined by him. An illegitimate son is not corrected in this way. If you endure chastening, God deals with you as with sons. For what son is there whom a father does not chasten? But if you are without chastening, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate and not sons. Jewish tradition taught that in disputes over inheritance, God had a test which would supernaturally reveal who the legitimate son was, the heir to the birthright of leadership and inheritance of family property. The people of the Second Temple period were well aware of this tradition held by the Jewish sages, which claimed that the saliva of a legitimate firstborn heir would have healing properties against injury or disease. If he was legitimate, healing was expected to miraculously take place once the disputed son's saliva anointed the affected member. There were some in the Second Temple period who believed in and followed Yeshua, but there were also those who did not. Foremost among their concerns were questions about his parentage. After all, Joseph, Miriam, and Yeshua had all freely acknowledged that Joseph was not Yeshua's father, and also that Miriam had never been married before she married Joseph. Yet Yeshua had clearly been conceived and born, and someone had to be the father. But who? Sadly, in today's society, these facts would hardly raise an eyebrow. However, in that day, it had all the markings of a horrible scandal with real lifelong ramifications. However, Yeshua also claimed that he had no earthly father, none whatsoever. He claimed to have come from God, the Heavenly Father. If he had been a sinner or the product of sin, he could hardly be expected to be able to heal anyone, since God was the source of all healing. This is the context of John chapters 8 and 9. A much larger lesson is at work here than just a series of disconnected teachings and healings. In chapter 8, Yeshua had spoken extensively about his origins, and when he spoke of his father, the answer from his audience was, "Who is your father?" It was no accident that just after this exchange he was asked the question, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, to bring about his blindness?" Some also believe that an illegitimate child would be chronically ill or have birth defects. He answered the question about the origin of the man's blindness verbally, but then demonstrated something which spoke convincingly about his own origins, his legitimacy and his right of inheritance. Yeshua chose to demonstrate that his saliva contained healing properties, presenting a catch-22 to his critics. According to the sages, anyone whose saliva could heal in this way demonstrated by a supernatural revelation of God that he was the legitimate firstborn heir of his father. How could his demonstration of legitimate inheritance from above be reconciled with his lack of an earthly father? They could only be reconciled if his statements about his origins were true. He was the only legitimate and unsullied true heir of the Father, the divine source of healing and restoration. The conclusion of the story is both happy and sad. As with much of mankind, few chose to believe, most will not. The blind man believed, but the doubt expressed by others says they could not reconcile the conflict. They said, We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't know where he's from. His origins were still unresolved in their minds. His claim of legitimate inheritance, validated supernaturally by the Father, could not be reconciled with other things their ears had heard and their eyes had seen. They claimed to be able to see clearly, but they remained blind to his person, his nature, and his purpose. Well, how about you? In whom do you put your faith? Can you see the person of Yeshua clearly? I hope this lesson was helpful. If someone says you don't need to understand the Jewish context of the New Testament, you're being robbed of its richness and depth. And in that sense, you're being deceived. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get more content like this. Shalom.